folks. This is John McLeod with Complete Not Authority. Um, this week, I'm in a different location. I'm in Columbus, Georgia, uh, at my mother's house. Um, Recently, she had a retirement ceremony, and I just thought I'd go in and support her. So I've pretty much been hanging out here ever since. Yeah. This week, I just wanted to discuss with Mortal Kombat, the new Mortal Kombat game coming out, MK1. I thought I wanted to discuss Mortal Kombat a little bit. Um, I mean, Mortal Kombat has most certainly come a long way from its humble beginnings in 1992 when the first game originally was released. Um, I mean, what made the game unique at that point in time was the use of the what's known as digitized graphics. You use actual people, actual actors, um, and you put them on a certain green screen, and you just digitize those graphics from there, and it would definitely make for a really unique video game, and definitely and also a unique experience. Um, Before Mortal Kombat, there were quite a few games that was released that also used digitized graphics. Most notably, games such as Narc, that was pretty much like a a side-scrolling up and down shoot 'em up game. Um, it was basically a game that was just based on you just go around and shoot around bad guys, drug dealers, and whatnot. With the whole "Just Say No" anti-drug campaign that was pretty big at the time. You know, when you had the Ronald Reagan era and whatnot. I mean, that made for a pretty cool game. I mean, I remember at the time it looked so weird. I mean, definitely it looked like it was definitely such a weird game, but it was cool at the same time. So yeah, you had Narc, and also most notably Pit Fighter, a game that was made by Atari. Well, in but the Japanese version was actually made by Konami, was actually produced by Konami, which I thought was really interesting. But Pit Fighter was just your, I mean, it, it was a beat 'em up, but yet at the same time it was a fighter. I mean, it was a game where you had to pick, where you got to pick and choose from three other fighters. You had Kato, who was uh, I mean, you had your trope, your stereotypical trope between the three guys. You had Kato, who was the well-rounded guy who knew martial arts, and then you had Tai. He was uh, the speedy, fast dude who knew karate, kung fu, I believe. And then of course you had the big guy Buzz, who was just the strong and more powerful of the trio. Of course, he did professional wrestling and stuff. Like his style was more of professional wrestling and whatnot. You basically just you just square off against different opponents and whatnot, like the Executioner and uh, Chain Man Eddie, and there was just one. There was a one. There was a female character named Angel. You fight all the way to the mysterious masked warrior and whatnot. I mean, it was just your. It was basically just your run of the mill fighting game that kind of combined the beat 'em up and the fighter and the fighter. And yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because of it most notably being uh, I would say probably one of the more famous games, probably the most famous game that used digitized graphics before Mortal Kombat. And then, of course, I mean, when Mortal Kombat came out, the first game in 1992, it was just, I mean, it was heavy. It was heavy. I mean, it was, I mean, it was big. I mean, you had the original seven: Liu Kang, Kano, Sonya, uh, Raiden, yeah, Johnny Cage, and of course Sub Zero and Scorpion, who are like the fan favorites. And then of course you had Goro, Shang Tsung as the boss characters, and Reptile as the secret character. I mean, the game was just for its time. It was one of the most violent. It was one of the most violent games out there at that point in time, and of course it was the reason why video games are now rated, has a rating system now, because it made the people in made people out in Washington D.C. and Congress just go all up in an uproar. And I think that's just what I liked about the game, was just it was just so fascinating with the controversy and whatnot. And yeah, man. I mean, of course, the fatality was another reason. I think the fatalities was like the main star of that game at that point in time. It was the fatalities, most definitely. I mean, you had Kano, just Kano with the heart ripping fatality, ripped the heart out of his opponent. Sonya's kiss of death, and Scorpion, the fire breath fatality, and of course Sub Zero with the spine fatality, which which was the one fatality that caused an uproar, which was kind of crazy when you think about it. But yeah, that was pretty dope. And then hell, even Liu Kang, which I would look at as one of the lesser. I would definitely say it was the lesser violent fatality, one of the less violent of of all the fatalities, because all he did was just did a scissor kick and an uppercut, and even that looked badass. I mean, I mean, yeah, even the most non-violent fatalities just looked awesome. So yeah, and then the home release of Mortal Kombat was just crazy. I mean, to this day, I think I just look at the home release of Mortal Kombat, of the very first Mortal Kombat game that was being released on the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Game Gear, all the big consoles, which were all the biggest, which were all the main consoles that were out at the time. So and I believe it's the 30th anniversary of the home release of Mortal Kombat. So yeah, so happy 30th anniversary. Also, it's the 30th anniversary of the sequel to Mortal Kombat, that followed up to that, Mortal Kombat 2. I mean, Mortal Kombat 2 was just amazing. I mean, it was definitely just the perfect sequel to the original Mortal Kombat. I'll never forget the ad, um, the advertisement, the advertisement page that they did on back when you actually had to buy a magazine, when you had video game magazines, in order to figure out and know what game was coming. So yeah, it was that long ago. But I'll never forget the ad that they put out. It boldly said Mortal Kombat has finally met its match, and that was just insane. And it was a fact. I mean, they definitely did outdo themselves. That was what they went in doing the sequel for. I mean, they definitely outdid themselves. I mean, kudos to them for that. I mean, it was just nuts. Um, you had more characters. Uh, I mean, you had uh, the fatalities were insane. The violence was just through the roof. The secrets, where you get to fight Jade, who's pretty much a clone of Kitana and Melina, where both of them made their debut. Jax, Baraka, and Kung Lao. both of them, all of them made their debuts, as well as Shang Tsung and Reptile, who made their debut. Both of them made their respective debuts as playable characters, seeing that they were boss secret characters in the first one. And there was all kinds of secrets. They had the fatalities, stage fatalities, babalities, where of course where you turn all your turn your opponent into a baby, and then you had the friendships. Yeah, there was just a lot going on during that point in time, and it was just amazing. And then of course the home release, which was crazy, which was on. I mean, it was the home release on the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo. I believe there was a home. Yeah, there was a home release for the Sega 32X, which was big at the time. So yeah, it just. I mean, it just caught on like wildfire. Then, of course, a couple of years after that, you had Mortal Kombat 3. Um, again, I mean, they just had a lot more. They had the animalities. Of course, they had the uh, your typical fatality all new stage fatalities, the friendships, of course, and the babalities, I believe. Yeah, you had that as well. New characters, Striker, uh, of course, the cyber ninjas who became just as popular as I would say they definitely. Well, yeah, they became just as popular. They became fan favorites. I mean, they were my favorites. Cyrax, Sector, and then Smoke, who was one of the secret characters from Mortal Kombat 2, as well as Jade. Uh, but in that game, but in the first one, he was the the original version of Mortal Kombat 3. He was a cyber ninja, and then in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, he was a human. He was a human ninja. So, so yeah, a lot was just going on in that. A lot was just going on in Mortal Kombat 3. I mean, there was two different versions. One that was released in '95, and the other one was like a year later. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, where you had a lot of new characters like Rain and Noob Saibot. Johnny Cage made his Johnny Cage return, and Sonya Blade and Kano, they made their return as well. Seeing that both Kano and Sonya wasn't really they weren't present. I mean, they weren't playable characters in the second one, but you did see them in the background. And I think it was Shao Kahn's, and where you got to play in a level where it was Shao Kahn, and you saw him in the background, uh, captured and whatnot. So so yeah, a lot was just going on in Mortal Kombat with Mortal Kombat 3. And then of course the first Mortal Kombat movie came out, and that was a pretty big deal. I mean, in less than 4 years, I mean, not four, yeah, in 3 years, the game become the game becomes a successful franchise. It's the original trilogy just blew up, and then you have a movie on New Line Cinema, produced by New Line Cinema in 1995, which was just huge, which was huge at that time. Um, and basically because of the fact of video game based movies was relatively a new thing. I think, well, before that, there was the god awful Super Mario Brothers movie, which was trash. Well, in my opinion, but but then Mortal Kombat, about a year after Mario, a year or so after that, uh, Mortal Kombat definitely kind of opened the possibility that it is doable to make a video game based motion picture movie. It is possible that you could do that. So so yeah. Um, then of course in from Mortal Kombat 4 and so forth, going into the 2000s, all of the games that they released for like a for like over a decade was 3D based, and which was cool. Me personally, I mean, me personally, I was a bit iffy on that concept. Uh, I mean, it was cool that they went through that they went through the 3D era. Started with Mortal Kombat 4. We actually got to draw weapons and whatnot, and they kept that going with Mortal Kombat 5, Deadly Alliance, and then Deception, and then Armageddon. And then of course uh there was that god awful Marvel, not Marvel, Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, which was just insane. Which was rated T for teen, which was just garbage because they toned down the content of the game because Mortal Kombat was known to being a, let's just face it, a very violent, bloody, gory type game, and it was just, yeah, it was just crazy how they just went into that direction of limiting the violence on that game, considering the characters that were involved with heck, Superman, Batman, and Scorpion, and Sub Zero, and just to put those characters together, and, and then you had Dark Side and Shao Kahn as the bosses of the game. So so yeah, it was times like that that just seemed a bit weird at that time because seeing because they were doing mostly 3D games. They were basically just doing the entire franchise in 3D. But oh man, when they announced Mortal Kombat 9, and I'll never forget it when they showed Mortal Kombat 9 and revealed it for the first time. It was like a breath of fresh air for them to just completely go back to the to 2D, to the two-dimensional style, like the original trilogy, the first three games, and that was like a breath of fresh air, and it was on ever since. And of course, they brought in that was the first game that brought in guest characters such as Freddy Krueger, and then Mortal Kombat 10 came along. They just kept that going by bringing in what the Predator, Alien, then you had Leatherface. Um, darn it. Yeah, and a whole just a whole bunch of other characters. Rambo, Terminator. I believe they was in MK 11, along with Spawn and the Joker. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think having guest characters in a franchise such as Mortal Kombat is cool. It's just a matter of who do you it's just a matter of which which character are you gonna get? I mean, and as for example, the brand new one that's coming out, MK1. I mean, I think they have confirmed that Omni Man, Homelander, and Peacekeeper. Um, so there was a rumor. I think it has been confirmed that all three of those characters um, will be will be joining will be joining will be joining into Mortal as guest characters in Mortal Kombat 1, MK1. So I think that'll be interesting because I mean I'm sure people have seen all those characters in their respective shows, and they have been known to be pretty darn violent with what they do and how they do things in their respective stories and universes. So so yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I mean the trailer for MK1 looks amazing. I mean it I mean it's in a sense a reboot or a reset of the entire MK universe. So basically they're doing Mortal Kombat from a completely different point of view, from a different perspective. I think I think that's interesting for them to just reset everything. I mean, they've done it before, but for them to do another reset and just go from another timeline. So I'm 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 interested and definitely excited on where they go with this, on where they go with that. So yeah, I will definitely be looking out for that. And I guess that'll do it for me here on Complete Number Authority Saturday night. Um, excuse me. I'm not gonna lie, it does feel different doing my show from another location. I mean, first off, there's the lighting. Uh, yeah, I know Glenn is gonna get on to me about that, about with the lighting and everything. Because I don't think people could barely see me. So so yeah. uh, Hold on. There we go. Yeah. Well, there's the lighting right there. Yeah. So yeah. Until then, this is John McClyde, and I will see you guys next week while I do it. Well, next week I may possibly do a little bit of a discussion with Street Fighter, seeing that Street Fighter 6 is now out. So be sure to look out for that next week, and I will see you guys until then. Peace.